I'm Carlos Santos, founder and operator of Virtus Music, and the topic of today's talk is pain point number one, which is I thought I was playing the music correctly, but it turns out that I missed key details. This will be part one of a 5-part series on pain points in practicing. Virtually everyone, including me, encounters this roadblock in their practice. The issues and solutions presented in this video are intended for practicing sheet music, not improvisation. However, some of the suggestions can apply to the latter. Can you recall a time you were practicing a section really hard, thinking you were making so much progress and being so excited to show your teacher what you've done, only to realize that you missed a few key details? Maybe you thought the piece was in 3/4 time when it was in 4/4. Perhaps you missed those staccatos that you were supposed to play in the left hand. And sometimes you just missed 1 or 2 flats in the key signature, which made the piece sound really weird to you, but you couldn't exactly put a finger on the reason why. I experience some form of these problems or related ones daily in my teaching and practicing. Playing music is a complex task. It's hard, it requires a lot of attention, and it takes much longer than we think. Often in my students' lessons, I watch them demonstrate a section for me, and then they make a mistake, and then they try again, over and over, sometimes 3 or 4 times without putting much thought into what went wrong. This is a recipe for wasting time and getting frustrated. It's like tripping over something in your room over and over again and not taking the time to realize what exactly you're tripping on and then putting it off to the side. It seems kind of silly, right? Before I talk about addressing challenges in your piece, we have to know how to diagnose them. Let's start by talking about the 5 elements of each note. There's the pitch, which is the letter name of the note, the fingering, what fingering you should play the note, the articulation, the manner in which the note should be played, so legato or staccato, for example, the rhythm, the note's length, and then the volume. Of the 5 elements, the last 2, rhythm and volume, can be ignored for now. I'll explain that later. If you've ever watched a painter in action, you'll see how they'll spend some time putting brush to canvas, and then they'll take a step back to see the bigger picture. They'll inspect the section they just painted and see if the form is right, if the colors fit, and how the sections blend in with their surroundings and the greater whole. This happens all the time throughout the process of painting. The equivalent for a musician is to stop playing your instrument and inspect the music to see if all the details are intact, namely the pitch, the fingering, and the articulation. Try playing hands separately at about 50% of your current pace to see how intact those first 3 elements are. It's often helpful to just focus on one measure at a time. First, see if your fingerings and your notes are correct. Then practice a few times to solidify it in your mind and in your fingers. Then add the necessary articulations and practice a few more times again. When those first 3 details are confidently integrated into the music, you can work out the rhythm. So why wait until now to work out the rhythm? The reason is that students will often try to play the section steadily and with the correct rhythm at the expense of the first 3 details. This is not the correct hierarchy in the learning process. It is counterproductive to try and play in rhythm while you are playing the incorrect notes with sloppy fingerings and improper articulation. Here's an analogy to dancing. It's best to practice the individual steps and moves within a dance until you're confident about each component before you try and dance to the song. If you try and dance too soon to a song without adequate competence of the individual moves, then your dancing will feel awkward and sloppy. So when you're integrating the rhythm into the section you're practicing, slow down again to place each note correctly in rhythm, then gradually speed up again. As for volume, which musicians call dynamics, that is beyond the scope of today's video. So, in summary, during your practice, it's important to take a step back and check if your notes, fingerings, and articulations and rhythm are intact. This is best done hand separately at a slow tempo and focusing on a small section of a few measures or a line at most, depending on how well you know the music. As a good rule of thumb, it's better to be skeptical regarding how well you're playing the music versus overly confident, as it's the latter attitude that makes one more prone to missing details in the piece. If you found this video helpful, you might consider sending it to someone you know who might benefit from it. Stay tuned for part 2 of the series. Thanks for watching.